Hi guys, welcome to this, my first Flosstube video, where I'd like to introduce myself and tell you a bit about my stitching story. My name's Hannah and this is my channel, Handmade, because my friends call me Han and my middle name is May and I made all this stuff. So my stitching, I was introduced to stitching by my grandma when I was really little. So my grandparents, they live a couple of 100 miles away, and during the school holidays my sister and I would go and stay with them to give my parents a bit of a break from two precocious girls. So grandma would have to think of things to do to occupy us, and we did all sorts of amazing things. She'd take us to National Trust sites. She inspired our love of literature. We were always reading books. She'd take us down the library, and she'd also, so she was a crafter herself, and she did a lot of knitting. She was always working on a new jumper for Grandad, and she also did a lot of cross stitching. And so to sort of give us something to do, and also because of course if you love books you need a bookmark, she would give us these little scraps of Ada, these tiny thin strips, and give us all these odds and ends of multicoloured threads. And she taught us how to do the Danish method, so all of your stitches in one direction and then back in the other. And we'd do a new colour on each row, and that would be our bookmark. Except I never actually finished one. So I don't have anything to show you with that, but it was also grandma that provided me with my first cross stitch kit. So as a family, all three generations, we would go abroad on holiday, and grandma, being crafty, would take her knitting and her cross stitch with her, and she was a subscriber to the UK cross stitch magazines, and they came with a free kit on the front every issue. And so I remember this holiday when I was about 8, we'd gone to Menorca, and you know, after a day of splashing around in the pool and or having been tucked away reading my book, I'd sort of want something else to do, so I'd wander into the kitchen and grandma would be sat there at the table working on her cross stitch, and so I'd sit and I'd watch her and I'd think, that looks kind of fun. So eventually I sort of plucked up the courage and said, Grandma, do you mind if I have one of those to do? And of course she said yes. And so she let me pick which one I wanted, and for some reason I picked this one. And she showed me what to do, and I finished it that holiday. So bearing in mind this is about over 20 years ago, I've got the finish here to show you. This is my first ever cross stitch finish, and it's a bookmark which, you know, stays true to the origins of the first ever stitching that I did. But it's in a, oh gosh, is it in a state? Right, so something's obviously got spilt over here on it, and that something must have eaten away at the threads. Then we've got a loose bit of thread up here. I'll show you the back, it's in the right state. All of my crosses are going in alternating directions because I decided that that's how I wanted to work. That made the most sense to me, the most sort of efficient thread, you know, all of that kind of thing. And grandma actually told me after I'd done this, she said, you should make them all go in the same direction. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I like the way I'm doing it. And I resisted for ages. And then one day I tried it on another project, and I was like, oh, she was right, it does look better. But I didn't tell her that, of course. So you can see, I don't know if you can see, but just here in the T of the stitch, there's a knot on the front, because obviously I didn't know, I got a knot and I didn't know what to do with it. You can see all the, hopefully you can see the messy tension, the crosses going all in different directions. My fringe is uneven, like it's longer on one side than the other. And then let's look at the back. So some people say that looking at the back is like really rude or something, or like, you know, you should be ashamed. I don't know, I don't understand. I don't care. I want to show you because, I mean, hopefully you can learn something from it, even if it's that, you know, it doesn't matter. Or if it's that everyone starts off with a messy back and they get better with practice. So here we are. Here is the state of the back of my first project. So can you see what is going on here? Like, I have absolutely no idea. Got this loose thread. I don't know if I was trying to leave some length to attach something. I have no idea. There's this big loose bit here. You can see, hopefully, is it going to focus? Yeah, you can see with the, I obviously had no idea what I was doing, trying to start and finish threads. I think there's a big knot over here somewhere in the heart. This isn't too bad. I'm obviously getting better. God knows what's going on over here with the border. I've been carrying threads all over the place. Yeah. So there we have it. That, my first ever cross stitch. I don't remember ever using it as a bookmark. But there we go. And I'm amazed actually that I still have it. But look how grotty it is. I finished this on that holiday and I was hooked. So Grandma, being the huge enabler that she is, she got me subscriptions to these magazines. So I started off with Cross Stitcher. I would do the little, or at least I would start the little kits on the front. And I finished quite a lot of them and I'd give them away. I did I think it was a card to celebrate the new millennium that ended up getting framed, and I think my mum still has somewhere. I did all sorts of little things. I'd give them away for birthday presents and all of these kind of things. And as many as I gave away, I started and didn't finish. But eventually, sort of, I graduated from those tiny little kits to bigger kits. It was actually Grandma that provided me with those. So she lives in Sheffield, and there was a big department store called Coles, and they sold cross stitch. And she'd see these kits, and she bought me a couple. And you can tell they are so dated. But here we go. Here is the first one. This is Dressing Table Bear from Forever Friends. This, oh my gosh, this took me so long. I have no idea when I started it. I'm not entirely sure when I finished it. My sister and I would go and stay with Grandma and Granddad to give my parents a break, but also every year we'd go all three generations on these holidays, as I said. And I took this every time, every holiday I took this, and I try and make progress on it. But I think it was over 10 years it took me to do. And I mean, some of it may be down to the fact that it isn't really my thing. I mean, I was quite young at the time, maybe 10, 12, something like that. And yeah, I thought it was cute, but it's big. Yeah, it took me forever. But when I look at it, actually, the stitching is really quite neat. So this was obviously after the time that Grandma had told me that you're meant to have all your stitches going the same way. So let me see if I can show you a close-up, maybe, of some of the stitching. You know, it's not too bad. I mean, the framings, it's really grubby. I framed it when I was at university in these cheap clip frames. And it's so grubby now. But yeah, so there we go. So Forever Friends, I think, Dressing Table Bear. If you're interested, I keep all of the stuff from kits that I've done. I've even got packaging and the pattern and spare threads from projects that I don't remember stitching. But I obviously did, and I obviously gave them to somebody. I just don't remember. So yeah, that was one of the ones that Grandma bought me. Oh look, I actually dated it. I don't normally sign it, but down here you can see I did. I was obviously going through a phase. So I finished it in May 2007. but I started it a long time before that. So this is another kit that Grandma bought me, again I think from Coles, and let me just show you. This is Winnie the Pooh 4 Seasons, something like that, and I framed it myself. Again, while I was at university, I discovered an online shop where you could, I mean they're really common now. It was the first time I'd ever seen it. You could order custom size frames and different mouldings and different mats. I went and I did loads, and actually I have in my bedroom now a wall of cross stitch. Well, I say it's in my bedroom now, I'm actually in the middle of moving the house, not moving house, but within the house is getting redone, and I'm changing bedrooms, and everything's all a bit everywhere. And I don't know, maybe, hopefully, when I get it all back together, if I still have a cross stitch wall, then I'll show you it. But at the moment, this will have to do. Winnie the Pooh, 4 Seasons, something like that. It's a bit grotty still. The stitching's still okay. I've got some French knots in here that aren't too bad, actually. I mean, yeah, it's okay. It's just not really my thing. I do like Winnie the Pooh. But I think it's the colours. I think it's that I don't know. But this is another one that I used to take on holiday. And again, it's a big one. So Grandma didn't shy from buying me the big stuff. And maybe that's where I got my sort of go big or go home attitude. I don't really like doing smalls anymore. I think it's because I really don't like working in hand. And I found a solution now that like a frame that will let me do small things. So maybe my opinion will, I'll swing back around to doing some smalls, who knows. Oh, when did I finish it? I did sign this one as well. So again, I finished this one in May 2007. So it wasn't long after that point that I got bored of doing the little kits on the front of the cross stitch magazines, and I'd read the magazines and I'd look through and there'd be all these beautiful designs, and I'd want to do them. But up until that point, I'd been so scared of going out and actually getting things kitted up. I'd never done it before. I actually decided to try kitting something up for myself, and I kitted 2 things up, both of them from cross stitcher magazines. I assume that the different issues, I can look it up if you'd like to know. And the first one is this, Lady Rose by Joan Elliott. So you know how I was saying that I kind of have this go big or go home attitude, I go all in. So the first time I kitted anything up, it's on coloured fabric that I'd never used before. It's got blending filament, it's got beads. I mean, it's not a small design. I really went for it. And I'm not sure about the colour of the fabric now. I was so scared because it was my first time. I just went with exactly what they said, exactly what was called for. And I'm not sure about it now. But she's my favourite Joan Elliott, I think. She's beautiful. I don't think I can show you the sparkle. But there is blending filament, all in the blue of her dress, there's blending filament. Or it's certainly in her sleeves anyway. So you've got beads all along the hem of her skirt, all up in the sash that she's got around. There's French knots in the centre of the flowers. And up in her hair, you've got more beads and more flowers. So I think she's lovely, even with not being quite so sure about the colour fabric. And this is one where I got the frame also from that online custom framing place. Chose the moulding, chose the matting. It was the first time that I'd ever seen it where you could upload a photo of your picture and have a sort of preview of what your framing would look like, your finished framing. And so I did that with lots and lots of different projects, and this was one of them. In fact, almost all of the projects that are hanging on the wall were done at the same time from the same framing shop. And I finished this in 2007, 2008, so my framed finishes are pretty old. The second one I kitted up, also from Cross Stitch magazine, is a really lovely design by Leslie Tier. And this is actually the only cross stitch that I've framed that doesn't have glass. I don't know why I decided to do that. I think I was having trouble with the beads. But here we go. It's this lovely girl. She's called Swing Into Spring. And again, for going for, you know, ambitious projects. Like, she's not small, she's got Lazy Daisy, she's got beads, she's got Madeira Gliss and Gloss. So I must have finished her in the same sort of time, or 2008-ish. And I love how I'm attracted to, you'll see a theme running through my projects, I'm sure, but I love beautiful girls and ladies, and I also seem to have a thing for redheads. But there we go. I just love those. This is also available in a green, she's a brunette with a green dress, but I just love the colours. Blue is my favourite colour. I was really quite proud of myself. Not only had I kitted them up myself, but I'd finished them. They were quite big. I'd framed them, but I was a bit. I got kind of fed up. The designs just weren't calling to me. I ended up cancelling a lot of my magazine subscriptions because for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months of the year it would be full of Christmas things and I just wasn't interested. It'd have all these cute bears and I just wasn't interested. There were some things that called to me, but I guess I got into knitting, I got into crochet, I got into all sorts of other crafts. And the cross stitch sort of waned again until I went to a craft show with my mum, and I am a sucker for the stitched models on they have their stands and they hang all of these beautiful framed stitch models of the kits that they're selling, and you know, I couldn't walk 2 steps without gasping and saying, oh, I absolutely love that. And Mum was the same. Mum, she knits, but she doesn't stitch. And she sees me stitching things, even now, and she goes, oh, can I have that? So we were at a craft show at the NEC, and we walked past this stall and we saw this and we both went, oh. And Mum said, will you stitch that for me? And I said, sure. And the project that I'm talking about is this one. I'm not sure who she's by. If you're interested, let me know. And she is a big girl and she is on black fabric, black even weave, entirely done in metallics with sequins and beads, and it's all black work. So I'd never stitched on even weave, I'd never stitched on black, I'd never done black work, I'd never attached sequins. Yeah, I found her really difficult. I got so frustrated. I counted wrong and I'd rip it out and I'd do it again and it was still wrong, it didn't meet up, and I don't know how many times I had to rip out the outline. But she is beautiful and she was so worth the effort, absolutely worth the effort. And she hangs in the living room with some of the other cross stitch that I've done for my mum. I mean, just look at her headdress. Look at that, all those sequins. Oh, you can see the state of the framing. It's a bit dirty because the house is all getting torn up. But you can see you've got these sequins and you've got these beads and you've got these metallics. God, it's getting a bit heavy. Oh yeah, she's absolutely lovely. She's stunning. But I think it's fair to say that after her, I got a bit burnt out. And again, I was into all my knitting and crochet, and I've tried weaving and lamp work and so many different crafts. And it wasn't until I went to another craft show that I got back into cross stitch. And that was in 2015, at the beginning of 2015, January. Some friends and I went to the Sandown Racecourse craft show. And again, they had these stalls with these beautiful stitched models. And my friends aren't really stitchers. I've taught one of them, and she's into it, but not like us. They'd walk past and they go, "Oh wow, that's lovely," but they're much more into paper craft and all of that kind of thing. And there I was, and I was going, "Oh, I have to get it. I just have to get it." And they were like, "Oh, but that's a lot of money." And I'd go, "I don't care. I am getting it." My lovely assistant has joined me. I've actually got both him and his brother here. So this is Paddy. Let's see if I can spin around to show you. Here's Paddy. He's a beautiful, friendly cat. And he likes to assist me in all of my stitching. He likes to sit on my lap. He likes to attack any threads that I have parked and that are dangling down. He likes to sit on my patterns and just generally help in any way that he can, including in making these videos apparently. Okay, so and as it happens, his brother is currently lying on all of the projects that I'd like to show you. Okay, so at this craft show that we went to in January of 2015, I fell in love with these two projects, and one of them I finished, and this is it. This is Rare Beauty from Maya, and this was framed on one of the stalls, and I just couldn't walk away. I couldn't leave it behind. I had to take it with me. It's absolutely stunning. And it took me quite a while to finish it. I'd come home from work and I'd put in a couple of hours each time, as much as I could, but it's so much detail, so much shading, so many colours, and all those whiskers, oh my word. But yeah, I saw this, and I'd been looking for knitting things. I'd been looking at different yarns and things to try, but I saw this and I just thought, I have to do some cross stitching again. So there we are. Look at all those whiskers. And my friends thought I was a bit mad. They were like, "Oh, that's a lot of money." And I said, "I don't care. Cross stitch is, but if you think about how many hours of enjoyment you get out of one kit that costs, I don't know, as much as a nice meal out for two people, you know, I have absolutely no regrets." And we'd do these craft evenings, and they'd come over and we'd do our crafting things, and I'd show them where I'd got to and send them photos. And yeah, but now that I have met all of you guys, my stitching is just ridiculous. Like, I don't stop. But I'll get to that in a sec. So there we are. That's Rare Beauty by Maya. Okay, so as I said, there were two kits that I absolutely had to have at this craft show, and this is the second one. I still haven't finished it, but I'm getting there. And you may have seen this if you're on Instagram. I'm on Instagram under Handmade, HANMAYDE, and you'll have seen photos of this because I've been working on it recently. I really, really, really would like to have it finished this year. This is a kit from, and I'm going to butcher this, Zoloto Runo. They're a Russian company. The name translates to Golden Fleece, and they have charted a lot of artwork by Leonid Afremov. He's this impressionist painter that uses this absolutely gorgeous palette of colours. It's stunning, and I'm sure, as you can imagine, I saw this on the wall of a stand, and even though I'd bought the leopard, I was like, nope, I have to have that. And this is my first real full coverage piece, and I was so excited to start it. I went right into it, and I hit a wall really soon on. I mean, probably, up to here I was only in the sky. I hadn't even got to the lamp yet. I was in the sky and all these trees, and I just couldn't I didn't know how to work with all of those colours. I was trying to do it cross country, and all the changing of the threads, it's on Ada, and having to turn the work over to secure the threads and then turn it back, and and I ended up putting it down for quite a while. So, as you can probably have noticed a pattern, I'd pick up cross stitch and I'd put it down, and I'd pick it back up and I'd put it down. And it was while I was in one of these down phases that I was working on a different craft. I can't remember now if it was knitting or crochet or whatever, but I'd got in the habit of, so if I'd forgotten how to cast on, say, I'd go to YouTube and I'd look up a video and I'd browse and the different things and see what was in the suggestions and see what I could learn. And I was learning tatting, and I was looking up videos, and I suddenly thought, I wonder if there's any cross stitch tutorials. And I mean, this was what I'd been stitching 18, 19 years at this point, and I thought, there can't really be much that I don't already know, but I'll have a look. You never know, as I always love to learn something new. I thought maybe there might be a different kind of embroidery or something. Well, I discovered the parking tutorials. It was just a revelation. I thought, oh my gosh, I can actually use that and make progress on this beautiful project that I want to finish it so badly, but I'd hardly got anywhere. And that was when I found Carolyn Mazio, and from there I found other people. I got hooked on Flosstube so badly. Well, actually, no, I wasn't hooked straight away, because I found the tutorial and then I saw these sort of, I guess the vlogs, aren't they, of people just sitting in front of the camera. It's like, what? I don't understand. Like, what's the point of watching these? And it wasn't until I was doing some Googling, always Google anything that you find out new. And I found some blog posts and things. I hadn't followed blogs. I still don't really, because you can't read whilst you're stitching. And I found a post that said about, these Flosstube videos and how they watched them while they were stitching. And it was like a light went on. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. So I put on some Flosstube. I don't even think it was called Flosstube at this time, I'm not sure. Put on some Flosstube and started stitching, and I was like, yeah, I get it now. I so get it. And since I started watching Flosstube, my stitching has been ridiculous, and it's all your fault. And I love it. So no worries. Right, so what I'd like to do now is show you some of the other things that I've done since I started watching Flosstube, because I have begun to experiment. Like I say, I love learning new things, and up until the point where I found Flosstube, I thought learning new things meant learning a different craft, so going to knitting or crochet or weaving or tatting or all of the other, bobbin lace. Arlene, I've tried bobbin lace. All of the other different crafts that I've tried, different sort of needlework type things. But it wasn't until I found Mrs. Milky Bar Kid that I realised that there were different types of embroidery, and there's all these different materials and specialty stitches. Oh my gosh, I love specialty stitches. So let me just show you some of the things that I've learned since Flosstube. So Flosstube introduced me to Mirabilia. Now that I know what they are, and now that I've done some, I realised that I saw them in those they were advertised in those magazines that I was subscribed to, but because I was so reluctant to kit anything up myself, I don't know, they never really registered. But when I saw you guys doing them on Flosstube, I thought, I have to try one of these. And it took me a little while to find them, because as is always the way with cross stitch online, it just the photos never have the same impact. So I was sort of umming and ahhing about trying to find one that I wanted, and the one that I eventually settled on is this one. And excuse the massive crease down the middle, my able assistants decided to sit on this on the table where I've got it ready for filming. But this is Circle of Friends. And so this is the first time that I'd worked on linen, and I went for this really dark chocolate brown, which I think looks absolutely beautiful. I even prefer it to the suggested fabric, which at this point I was still terrified of changing anything. So I was desperately looking for the called for fabric, and they don't do it anymore. This was the suggested alternative, I think, on so and so. So this is what I went for, and I had so much fun stitching this. So I was sort of experimenting with the parking method. I was doing blocks of colour and then parking a colour when I was bored of it, and and also if it got too far to count, and then I'd move on to another colour. And the beading, I'd done beading before in Lady Rose and in Spring into Spring, but the way she uses beading, oh, Nora Corbett is so clever, and her use of colours, oh, she's such a talented lady. There we go. I actually made a mistake on this. This was the first time that I used Kreinik number 4 braid. I'd only used the blending filament, and only that once in Lady Rose up until this point. But I got the colour of the Kreinik backstitch in this dress completely wrong. It's supposed to be this light turquoise that's in this sort of paisley motif over here. That's supposed to be the backstitching of these sort of, I don't know, sprigs, flowers, whatever they are. And I just got the wrong colour. But by the time I realised, I had done all of the backstitching in that colour, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. So there we are. Oh gosh, you can see the cat hair. Yep. Get rid of that. As I say, they like to help. So there we are. That was my first ever Mirabilia. So not one lady, not two, but 3 ladies on really, really dark. The only other time that I'd worked on dark fabric was that Tallulah that I showed you. I'm not sure I'd ever done 32 count before. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it, go for it. Yeah, so that was my first Mirabilia, and I have done lots since. I'm absolutely hooked. I always have at least one Mirabilia on the go. Well, it's been a while since I've worked on one, actually. I need to rectify that. So not only did YouTube and Mrs. Milky Bar Kid introduce me to Mirabilia, or convince me anyway to start it, I had seen Victoria Sampler at craft show, and my mum had seen it, and I don't know which one it is now. It was some sort of Christmas design. I don't know if it was the Heirloom Christmas or the Nativity or something like that, but she saw it and she was like, will you stitch that for me? And I was like, oh, I don't know, I've never done any cut work before, and it is expensive. So I thought, you know what, maybe one day when I've had some practice. And I wrote down the name of it, and then I moved on to other crafts and I forgot all about it. But watching Flosstube, watching Mrs. Milky Bar Kid, she showed these, and I don't think I can show you all 4 at once, so I'll try and show you 2 at a time. So I love hardanger, and here we go, we've got 2 of the 4 seasons, and you can see I've been so lazy and I've not even secured all of the edges, the end threads. But you can see this is where I got my start with cut work. And I can't remember, I think Green Earth is actually the last one I finished. And you see you've got these drawn thread bands that I still need to work out how to neatly weave in those threads there. And you've got these specialty stitches, and you've got the hardanger. You've got dove's eyes and woven bars. And there's Karen water lilies and Overa soie. There's all sorts of specialty threads in there. Some Karen, are they wildflowers? I forget, the Pearl 5 cottons. Anyway, this is the first one that I did, the crystal blue waters. So you've got the satin stitch motifs, the cut work, got some spiders' webs. And you can tell that this is some of my earliest hardanger because it's not very neat. Some bargello, some half eyelets, more drawn thread, more bargello, lots of beads, lots of silks. They're beautiful. And I lay the blame for these squarely at the feet of Mrs. Milky Bar Kid. So I finished the whole series. If you look on my Instagram, you can see what order I did them in and sort of how my progress as I went through them. Here are the other 2 in the series. Got Crimson Fire and Fresh Air. And again, they've all got hardanger in, they've all got silks and drawn thread and beads. Some pulled thread work as well. And I really need to figure out neatening the finishing of the drawn thread areas. You can see where I've tried to reweave in the threads and the tension's not quite right. Maybe some pressing will help with that. I'm not very good at pressing my projects once I finish them. I really enjoyed doing those, and it got me hooked on hardanger. I mean, I did some little hardanger lesson pieces, just some freebies that I found online to get me going, and it was Nina at Stitching with the Smiles videos that got me convinced that I could actually do hardanger. You know, it's not that bad. The cutting's really scary the first time you do it, but I think it's because I'd learnt how to weave, and when you're weaving, or at least when I'm weaving, I make a lot of weaving mistakes that have to be repaired. I don't notice until after I've washed it and whatever, and so you have to repair the weaving and make sure that you've got the actual pattern of the overs and unders that you need. And so I'm not unaccustomed to reweaving threads through a plain weave fabric. So yeah, this wasn't actually scary. I just thought, well, if I cut it, I'll just do what I do in the weaving and fix it. And in fact, actually, a project that I've got that I will show you, I did make a cutting mistake and I did have to repair it, and you can't notice. So I got to try silks thanks to the Victoria Sampler Elements Elements series. But I also wanted to try silks because everyone was doing the twisted band sampler. I'm not normally one who's influenced by what everyone else is doing, but I'd had so much fun with the specialty stitches in the Victoria Sampler, and also I'd enjoyed the silks and I wanted to give them a bit more of a go, you know, why not? And I just really liked the design. And so whilst I'm not one to sort of follow along with everyone else, if I like it, I'm going to do it. So I'd heard of, and this might also be thanks to Mrs. Milky Bar Kid, I'm not sure, but I'd heard of thread pickers silks. And when I'd gone and investigated, I mean, she's in Scotland, so, you know, I wanted to support UK business. And I went and had a look, and her prices were so reasonable. And I saw that she'd done these packs of colours specifically for the Twisted Rainbow band, Twisted Band, I think I've done the Twisted Band sampler, and they were beautiful, so I had to get them. And here we are. This is the Ocean Depths Thread Pickers Silks, and I actually bought 2 packs because I can't resist a series, and given that there's the Twisted Band and the Twisted Rainbow, and I can never get them straight which one I've done, but given that there were 2, I thought, and also I wasn't sure if I was going to run out of thread, so I bought 2 packs of silks, thinking if I run out of any colour, then I should have more of the same dye lot to finish that colour off, and then you won't see. And if I have a whole pack left over, then I can do the second design. And I had plenty of silk left. So someday I have got to do whichever one this isn't. I think it's a Twisted Rainbow. But oh, I had so much fun learning all the stitches. And actually I didn't really like doing the cross stitch bands. They just weren't anywhere near as fun. And I love this band here. This band here I absolutely love. I love the tied windmills. You've got the Scotch stitch. You've got something else that I can't remember in between. I absolutely love the windmills. This is much harder than you guys make it look. And not content with that, I had to try more drawn thread, more specialty stitches. So this is the Sweetheart Tree, and they do lovely designs, lovely delicate, they've got specialty stitches, these beads. There's not actually any drawn thread here, so there's no cutting, there's just some pulled thread with the eyelets, and a little charm that I had to find myself. I had to find the they call them pilets. I think it means sequins. I'm not entirely sure. But this one, I absolutely love. This one's the Irish Blessing sampler. Now, I'm a very small part Irish, but I'm half Scottish. So I have got in my mind ambitions to convert this to blues and sort of heather colours, and oh dear, I don't know what that was, and have thistles rather than shamrocks, but at the moment I've got so many other projects that I want to work on that I haven't got around to doing that. So as I said, I've fallen in love with hardanger and drawn thread work, but I'm not into doilies, and it seems like a lot of the designs that are around are those doilies and that kind of vintage look, and don't get me wrong, they are beautiful, but they're just not me. And so when I saw the designs by this lady, I thought, wow, that is definitely not a doily, and it's absolutely beautiful. I have to stitch it. So this is Ivory Blush by Judy Dixon. She goes by Tails and Stitches. She's got an Etsy shop. You might be thinking, that doesn't really look like ivory, and it definitely doesn't look like blush. And when I got the chart and I looked at the threads that were called for, they were all silks, or near enough all. And I just couldn't justify the cost when the colour palette wasn't really my thing. Now they've got much better photos on the website now, but at the time I was like, they're not really my colours, and that's a lot of money to be spending. So then I thought, well, I've got the whole collection of DMC stranded cottons. Can't I just do something with them? So I had in my mind, I wanted this old gold type feel. And I think I'm not sure I went for the right range. But I used the DMC colour card. And I picked a range of sort of golden browns. So I think it goes through from ecru to 434 or something like that. And I had some ecru pearl cotton to do the cluster blocks and wrapped bars with. And then I just figured out some Mill Hill beads that matched. And I managed to find, they've got these rice beads here, and they do supply you with the chart with the colour that matches their colour scheme, but the colour that was supplied just didn't go with the scheme I'd picked out, and I had a real struggle trying to find some different coloured rice beads, but I managed to find on eBay these golden brown ones that match really closely with the darkest DMC that I used. And this is the project where I made a cutting mistake. And if you're on Stitch Mania, I recently posted, because Letitia was talking about how she wanted to start hardanger, but she was a bit nervous. And so I posted pictures which I'd taken for Instagram of where I actually cut the wrong threads and had to do a repair. As you can see on that picture, and I don't even know when I look at this, I can't tell you where I made the mistake. I mean, maybe if I really closely inspected the back, I might be able to figure it out. But especially as it's symmetrical like a chatelaine, I don't know. I honestly have no idea where the mistake was. It was in one of these V shapes. Oh gosh, this is really difficult. There we go. One of these V shapes. But I have no idea which one. And it took me about half an hour. I cut 4 threads incorrectly. And it took me about half an hour to fix them. I just fixed them in the region of the mistake. So if it was here, I just fixed them between that cluster block and that cluster block. There's no need to fix, or at least I haven't found that there's any need to fix further beyond that. You can hide the ends and the stitches. I took a thread from the edge, probably this edge. I can see it's got some tufts on it. And I just rewove it in the pattern of the plain weave of the fabric. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased. I've got to get this one framed. But I don't have any more space. This illustrates, I don't do things small. I'd done a few bits of hardanger and I went, yeah, I'm going to do a massive piece. Why not? Okay, so having found out that I really like hardanger and I really enjoy the drawn thread work, I always keep an eye out for various different counted embroidery techniques, any patterns that come up on eBay, and this one was one that I saw on eBay for a really reasonable price, and it's called Whitework Elegance, and it was in Cross Stitch and Country Crafts, I think, but they released it as its own individual pattern, and it's probably quite difficult for you to see given that it's white on white, but I'll see if I can show. We've got this sort of back stitch border with eyelets and Smyrna stitches in this sort of filigree edging. We've got beading some satin stitching, the alphabet, more beading. You've got ribbon. Is that the bit with ribbon? Yeah, you've got ribbon tacked, or basically couched down along here. You've got this sort of lattice. I forget what the name of the stitch actually is, but they're basically long stitches that you then couch down with the beads at the intersections. You've got a sort of Schwalm-esque, it's chain stitching design, but it's not Schwalm. There's no pulled work in it. There's lazy daisies, and then it sort of repeats similar motifs, more satin stitching, more lazy daisies, more chain stitching. Yeah, so it's white work elegance. The hardest part about it was actually finding that white ribbon. It was really hard to find ribbon that was that narrow. The second hardest part about it is actually taking a photo of it. But it's lovely. That filled my fix for specialty stitches. I mean, I don't know why we call them specialty stitches. We need to eliminate this sort of fear factor that specialty stitches have. And I hope by showing some of these projects, I haven't shown the backs of any, but I hope by showing some of these that you'll maybe become inspired to try some. When I say that they're really, really not that easy. They're intimidating. They're really, really not that difficult. They're intimidating when you haven't done them. But once you've done a couple, and there's YouTube tutorials and all sorts, once you've done a couple, they're so much fun, and they just bring this extra texture to your project. So speaking of being on the eye out for different techniques and different patterns, I saw this on eBay and I just had to give it a go. So this is long stitch, and it basically, you use this sort of wool thread. It's acrylic, at least in this kit it was acrylic, but it's sort of the thickness of wool on this canvas that they use for counted canvas work. And there's a design, the outline of a design is printed on the canvas. And basically what you do is you start at the foreground and work your way through to the background, and you just cover the area with a long vertical stitch. Wherever, so this gold, you'd cover the area of this gold. Each one was a long vertical stitch adjacent to each other. And so it goes so much faster than cross stitch, because, you know, in, say, this stitch, I don't know, you'd have just this one stitch here in long stitch. You'd have, I don't know, 10 crosses to do. So not only is that 10 stitches, but it's 20 in and outs of the fabric. Whereas with the long stitch, you just do one in, one out. So it goes so much faster. And this is beautiful. It's the colours that attracted me to this. It's a bit fluffier, you know, and the tension's a bit all over the place. I mean, especially I found the smaller areas really difficult to do. I ended up doing them in a much tighter tension than the bigger areas. So you can see that they're sort of less, the longer areas are more raised than the shorter areas, but whatever. Now I have to say, I am not a stamped embroidery kind of person. Like, this definitely proved to me that there's something about working from a chart and counting that makes counted embroidery so enjoyable for me. This was quicker, and I'm glad it was, because I got a bit bored of it. I mean, it's lovely, and I'm so glad that I gave it a go, but I don't think I'll be looking out other long stitch projects to do. There's nothing difficult about it, but I found it boring. I should say that this is a kit from RavenProDesign, and it came with the canvas and the wool and the needle and the pattern and everything. So again, wanting to broaden my horizons, I'd stumbled across basically the American needlepoint, but needlepoint in the UK doesn't mean it doesn't mean the same thing as needlepoint in America. Like, you can't. I try so hard to search for needlepoint designs, and you just come out with the sort of the tapestry, you know, the tent stitch stuff, and I wasn't interested in that. But eventually I stumbled across counted canvas as the thing I should be looking for, and I discovered some beautiful designs from American designers, no least this design. Now this is Solar Flare by Ropace, and I saw this done on black on someone's blog. I can't remember their name now, but it is on my Instagram. I did credit them, and the design is it calls for a sort of eggshell, I think, coloured canvas, but this lady, she'd done it on black canvas, and it was absolutely stunning. So I hunted and I hunted, and I found on is it the Chili Hollow needlepoint blog, she said where you can find Ropace's designs. So I tracked this lady down, Sharon, on Facebook, and I bought the chart from her. And I said, can you possibly send me over the thread list so that I can start trying to kit it up while it's, you know, coming from America? And I looked at the thread list, and again, it was this, there were all these exotic threads from Rainbow Gallery and Silken Colours or whatever, I forget all of the names of them. But they are really difficult to find over here. But again, there's the expense. And I was reluctant to commit to all of that, to then give it a go and decide that it just really wasn't my thing. So what I did is I did it the same thing, well, a similar thing to what I did with Ivory Blush. I decided to do a conversion to DMC because I've got all of the colours. And so I pulled out all of the reds and the oranges and the yellows that I had in DMC, including some variegated. And I laid them all out, and I did a sort of gradient from the, you know, the yellow, or even the white really. I think it was 3865, the Snow White. Is that the right number? I'm not sure. Again, it's all on my Instagram, so I can find it out if anyone's interested. But I laid them out and did a gradient through the colours, and tried to pick the right hue and the right families that matched what was on the chart as closely as possible. Now the called for colours, they're almost, I think they're all variegated. I only ended up with one variegated thread, but I don't think it detracts from the design at all. And I absolutely loved it. So I haven't mentioned thus far, but I've mentioned that I went to university. I studied theoretical physics. A big part of that was astronomy. Probably more than I would have liked, but even so. So this design, being Solar Flare, really appealed to me. Okay, so there's a shape here, an irregular shape, that's rotated 4 times. You can see it from the waffle stitch that it appears 4 times. It's rotated 90 degrees each time to form a tile. That tile is repeated 4 times in a quarter, and then each quarter is rotated around the centre to form the whole design. And so this idea of tessellation and morphing tiles is something that absolutely fascinates me in sort of maths and geometry. And I'd never seen anything like it really in any other needlework designs. And then of course the specialty stitches, and there's all sorts of new specialty stitches that I hadn't done before. As I was saying, I couldn't justify the expense of all of those threads when I wasn't sure how I would feel about doing the design. And I couldn't find anywhere to buy black canvas. And I had this piece of, it's 27 count Black Linda by Zweigart. So it's 100% cotton, like canvas is, but it's a different count and it's not as stiff. And I thought, you know what, I can just give it a go, I can make it work on this. So what I had to do was I had to double the size of each stitch basically. So where on the canvas it would go across one fabric thread, I had to go across two. But then because the count is higher, so the canvas is 18 count, the working it over 2 on 27 count made it equivalent to 13.5 count. So it's worked out a bit bigger than the charted design, but not significantly so. And I only had to make a couple of changes to the stitches because of it. So basically I used 2 strands of DMC throughout for all of the stitches. It was absolutely fine for everything apart from the waffle stitches and the Scotch stitches. So what I did, instead of going every other, going over 2, I filled in extra stitches to make it over 1. So it still filled up the same size as if I'd been doing it over 2, but I added in extra stitches to fill in the gaps, just to give it a better coverage and make it look a bit less sparse. But so that should show that if you want to give a different technique a go, you don't have to do it on the material, with the materials, or even on the materials that it's called for. Give it a go with something that you've got. Try counted canvas on even weave that you've got with DMC threads. The stitches still work out the same. That Judy Dixon hardanger, this is 28 count Cream Brittany by Zweigart. So just because the fabric is called hardanger and it's 22 count, that doesn't mean that you have to do hardanger on that fabric. And in fact, hardanger wasn't originally done on that fabric. I mean, cross stitch wasn't originally done on Ada. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but what I'm trying to say is don't feel restricted to what is called for if you want to try something. If you want to try it, I mean, you could try this counted canvas on 18 count Ada if that's what you had. It might not come out the best it could be, because there are reasons why people choose to use canvas over Ada, but to just give you a taste and see if it's something that you want to try without investing in a load of materials that you don't know that you'll use again, just give it a go with what you've got. And if I may say so myself, I think you can get some beautiful results. Okay, so that's been my stitching story. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've got lots of other finishes that I can show you at another time if you're interested, and I've got plenty of whips that I'm working on. If you'd like to see any of those, please do check out my Instagram at handmade, HANMAYDE. And if you guys have liked this video, please subscribe, maybe leave a comment or like. If it goes down well, then I'll see you next time. Bye.